There's a part of you you've never dared to meet. It lurks beneath your good intentions, behind your curated smiles, and under the mask you show to the world. You pretend it isn't there. Society taught you to hide it. Your parents scolded it out of you. Your culture branded it as shameful, sinful, evil. And yet there it is. In the darkness of your quietest moments. In the flash of rage you couldn't explain. In the twisted pleasure of another's failure. In the envy you disguise as critique. This is your shadow. And it's starving. Carl Jung called it the thing a person has no wish to be. The sum total of all we exile from consciousness. The unacknowledged self. Not just evil impulses, but the primitive, raw, chaotic part of us that modern life has tried to tame into submission. But you cannot kill what is part of you. Repression doesn't erase. It festers. It grows teeth. And when ignored long enough, it doesn't knock on the door, it kicks it in. You felt it. The irrational outburst you couldn't control. The guilt you drowned in after acting out of character. The stranger inside that stares back when you lose yourself in anger or lust or grief. That is your shadow, screaming to be seen. Jung did not invent the idea of darkness within us, he just gave it a name that was honest. Not the devil, not demons, not original sin. Just the other side of you. The rejected self. The truth's too dangerous to say out loud. And here's the truth modern culture doesn't want to touch. Integrating the shadow is not a moral luxury, it is a psychological necessity. Because the parts of yourself you deny do not disappear. They drive your life from the backseat. They sabotage your relationships, distort your self-worth, and infect your decisions. And yet you go on pretending you are whole. You go on branding your darkness as dysfunction, your instincts as shame, your wounds as weakness. But tell me, who are you without your shadow? Who would you be if you never felt rage? Never knew fear? Never envied, never lusted, never fantasized about breaking free from the polite little box you've been squeezed into since childhood? That person wouldn't be good. That person would be dead. The shadow is not evil. It is power unclaimed, energy untamed, potential unexplored. In mythology, the monster always guards the treasure. What if your monster is the key to the life you've been too afraid to live? You see, the shadow isn't a villain, it is a mirror. It shows you everything you are and everything you've disowned. The liar you condemned in others, but never admitted in yourself. The coward you mocked, while hiding from your own truths. The manipulator, the narcissist, the sinner, always them, never you. But if you can see it in them, it already lives in you. That is the shadow's gift and curse. Projection. We cast onto others what we cannot face in ourselves. And so we remain blind to our own darkness, while obsessively pointing it out in the world around us. What happens when you finally look inward? When you stop blaming the world for your pain and instead turn to face the part of you that feeds on it? That's when the real war begins. Not with the shadow, but with the illusion that you were ever pure, ever clean, ever above it all. Integration begins with confession, not to another, but to yourself. Yes, I am jealous. Yes, I am angry. Yes, I want power, and sometimes I fantasize about destruction. It is in these whispers of truth that freedom begins, because what is owned cannot own you. The modern self-help cult wants you to be nice, wants you to be light. Positive vibes only. What a lie. What a prison. The light that denies the dark is not holy, it's hollow. The truth is this. Your growth does not come from your strengths. It comes from the confrontation with your shadow. From the willingness to walk into your own psychological underworld and say, I'm not here to judge, I'm here to understand. You cannot conquer what you refuse to confront, and so we ask, what is hiding in you? What face have you buried beneath 1,000 roles? The obedient child, the good student, the hard worker, the spiritual seeker, all roles, all masks, all armor. But beneath it, there is a creature waiting, not evil, not good, just real, messy, raw, alive. This is not a journey for the faint of heart. To meet your shadow is to risk annihilation of the self-image you've spent your entire life building. But what if that image was never you to begin with? What if your liberation lies on the other side of breaking it? The image you worship, the curated version of yourself, it's a beautiful lie. And lies, no matter how elegant, cannot hold the weight of a real life. They crack. And when they do, the shadow leaks through. Not because it hates you, but because it is you. The you that was exiled. The you that wasn't allowed to speak. The you who learned early on that survival meant silence. That truth was dangerous. That desire had to be hidden. So you buried it. Deep. You learned to smile through rage, to swallow resentment like it was virtue, to pretend you didn't want what you desperately did. But buried emotions don't die. They fester. They rot. They become the unexploded landmines in your mind. And one day, someone steps on one. A lover, a friend, a stranger. You erupt, not just with pain, but with everything you thought you buried for good. And you ask, why did I do that? That's not me. But it is. It was always you. It's just the you never allowed yourself to meet. This is the cost of spiritual censorship. We've become addicted to pretending we're better than we are. We chase healing like it's an escape plan from humanity. But real healing doesn't make you pure, it makes you whole. It returns to you the parts you rejected. The lust, the pride, the fury, the parts you call ugly because they don't fit into the narrative of who you're supposed to be. But why should your truth bow to expectation? Why should your fire shrink for anyone's comfort? Your shadow doesn't want control, it wants recognition. It wants a seat at the table. Not to dominate, but to be known. It is the voice that says what your ego cannot. The impulse that dares when you retreat. It is the warrior behind the mask of the peacemaker. The predator hiding behind the prey. And the longer you repress it, the more it distorts, because the shadow denied becomes the shadow possessed. That's when things turn dark. That's when addictions begin. Self-sabotage, rage blackouts, masochistic relationships, obsession. It is not weakness that causes them. It is disconnection from the very source of your psychic energy. And that energy, like all wild things, rebels when caged. You were not born split. You were made that way. By rules, by roles, by religion, by fear. You were trained to disown parts of yourself to be accepted, to be loved, to be safe. And it worked until it didn't. Because a life built on denial is a house built on sand. You can't outrun yourself forever. Eventually, the part you silenced will speak. Loudly. And if you haven't listened by then, it will scream. That's the breakdown. The rock bottom. The crisis moment when your persona collapses and the real you claws its way out from under the wreckage. That is the moment of power. Not the polished, performative power of image, but the primal, sacred power of truth. The truth that you are not all light. And that's okay. Because the stars only shine in the darkness. And a soul without darkness is a soul without depth. Jung knew this. He wrote that the shadow, once faced, is not just a source of pain, but of vitality, of authenticity, of creation. The shadow contains what you need most, your repressed talents, your disowned strength, your hidden purpose. Even your moral courage can live there, waiting for you to reclaim it. Think of the artist who hides their art because it feels too raw. The lover who buries their longing to avoid rejection. The revolutionary who plays small to avoid judgment. All shadow. All waiting to be lived. But make no mistake, meeting the shadow is not an intellectual exercise, it is not a spiritual trend or a psychological checklist. It is a descent, a fall into the underworld of your own being. You will lose things there, illusions, comfort, innocence. But what you gain is sovereignty, real sovereignty. The kind that cannot be given or taken because it comes from within. The kind that comes from saying, this is me, all of me, and I will no longer apologize for existing in full. This is not ego. This is integration, a return to your center, not split between saint and sinner, not swinging between repression and indulgence, but grounded, awake, whole. You begin to recognize the shadow not as the enemy, but as your compass, It points to the places that need your attention, the parts that need your love, the stories that need rewriting. And once you stop running, once you dare to listen, it becomes your ally. But the path is narrow, because culture rewards masks. It claps for personas. It fears depth. It does not want you free. It wants you obedient, docile, safe. But safe is not alive, and the shadow does not thrive in safety. It thrives in the raw, in the real, in the moments when you drop the act and say, I don't want to play this game anymore, I want the truth. And the truth is this: your shadow is not your darkness. It is your doorway. It is your doorway to the self that remembers, the self that existed before you were shaped, silenced, and shrunk to fit. The wild self, the instinctual self, the one that doesn't ask permission to feel, to want, to burn. And yes, there is danger there. Power is always dangerous to those who fear their own. That's why we demonize it. Call it ego. Call it sin. But tell me, what is more dangerous? The person who knows their shadow, or the one pretending they don't have one? The one who knows can hold the line between impulse and choice. The one who knows does not pretend to be innocent, and because of that, they are capable of true morality. Not the morality of repression, but of integration. The morality that says, I have rage, and I choose not to act on it destructively. Not because I fear punishment, but because I know its weight. Because I've held it, felt it, honored it, and mastered it. That is strength. That is what Jung meant when he said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. But most people want light without heat, transformation without discomfort. They want to awaken, but not descend. They want clarity, but not chaos. And so they stay in the middle, the numb middle, numb to themselves, numb to their hunger, numb to their own capacity for destruction and creation alike. And they call that balance. But it's not balance. It's fear, dressed as virtue. Because real balance doesn't come from avoiding extremes. It comes from holding them both in your hands, from standing in the tension between your light and your dark and saying, I am both, and I am neither. I am the one who chooses. Choice. That's what the shadow ultimately gives back to you. When you deny it, it chooses for you without your awareness, without your consent. It hijacks your thoughts, infects your relationships, warps your desires. But when you face it, when you name it, you reclaim your autonomy. You stop being a slave to what you don't understand. You begin to live not from reaction but from presence, from grounded knowing. But the shadow is cunning. It doesn't come dressed in horns. It comes in shame. It comes in projection. It shows up as the people you can't stand, the ones you judge, ridicule, despise. They are holding something for you. A trait, a wound, a disowned aspect of yourself. And the moment you're brave enough to ask, what am I seeing in them that I refuse to see in me? That's when the wall begins to crack. That's when the mirror turns inward. And yes, it hurts. Shadow work is not glamorous. It's not pretty. It's not Instagrammable. It is violent in the way birth is violent. Something must die. Usually it's your identity, the one you clung to like armor. I'm a good person. I'm enlightened. I'm the victim. The shadow tears through that delusion, because maybe you weren't just the one who was hurt, you were also the one who hurt others. Maybe you weren't just the savior, you were also the manipulator. Maybe you weren't just kind, you were terrified of being disliked, so you performed kindness to survive. These truths burn, but they are holy fire. They clear the rot. And in the ashes, something new can be born. Something honest, something fierce. You see, the purpose of shadow work is not to wallow in darkness. It's to transmute it. To take the raw, chaotic energy of your denied self and alchemize it into wisdom, into depth, into art, into love that doesn't need to pretend. That's what the world is starving for. Not more polished personas. Not more people parroting the language of healing while secretly drowning in shame. The world needs wholeness. And wholeness requires you to go all the way down, to sit with your monstrosity, and to recognize the sacred within it. There is holiness in the hunger you tried to bury. There is truth in the anger you called too much. There is liberation in the lust you were told to suppress. Not because indulgence is the answer, but because repression is a lie, and a lie cannot set you free. Freedom begins the moment you stop lying to yourself about who you are, about what you feel, about what you're capable of, both the darkness and the light, because only then can you stop projecting your shadow onto the world around you. Only then can you stop needing enemies to carry your own unseen traits. Only then can you meet another human being without a mask, without defense, without illusion. And that is intimacy, not just with others, but with your own soul. This is the real revolution. Not out there in systems and slogans and social warfare, but in here, in the underground of the psyche, in the place where you stop being afraid of your own depth, where you meet the monster and realize it was never here to destroy you. It was here to break your cage. You were never meant to be perfect. You were meant to be whole. And wholeness is not the absence of darkness, it is the union of all your parts. The sinner and the saint, the lover and the fighter, the creator and the destroyer, all of it, all of you. And when you stop apologizing for your complexity, you begin to live with a new kind of integrity. Not moral perfection, but alignment. A spine that doesn't bend for approval. A voice that speaks without disguise. This is the heart of shadow integration. Not that you become someone else, but that you remember who you've always been beneath the shame. You remember the strength in your fury, the sacredness of your wounds, the wildness in your joy. You no longer fracture yourself for love. You no longer amputate your instincts to be accepted. You walk as one. And when you walk as one, you are unshakable, because nothing is left to hide. And a person with nothing to hide is a person the world cannot control. You will still fall. You will still bleed. But you will bleed honestly. You will grieve in your own voice. You will rise without pretending. That is the shadow's final gift. Not just power, but peace. The peace that comes when the war inside you ends. When the child you silenced becomes your ally. When the monster you feared becomes your guardian. When the broken places in you become sacred ground. So no, you are not just light. You are the storm that births it, the cave that holds it, the hand that carries it forward into a world starving for something real. And if you're willing to turn inward, if you're willing to descend, then maybe, just maybe, you won't have to keep running anymore. Because the monster you feared was you all along. And now, it's time to come home.